Tonight, dead people collecting welfare? A new state audit finds almost $20 million in fraudulent benefits, including some to dead people. Plus, the trial of the summer is just a week away, but the families of Whitey Bulger's alleged victims may not get the chance to tell their stories. And the road to war. Presidents who have sidestepped declarations of war and paid the price. Now on Greater Boston. Good evening. Abuse of EBT cards, fraudulent claims, and millions of dollars in welfare benefits to dead people. That's what State Auditor Suzanne Bump says her office uncovered, all adding up to about $18 million worth of questionable payouts. It's a small part of the $1.7 billion in benefits the state doles out each year. Still, says Bump, it pains her to see taxpayer money get into the hands of the wrong people. The official audit into the state's Department of Transitional Assistance revealed significant evidence of fraud within the system. Among the findings, over 1,000 cases where a dead person was collecting benefits, over 200 cases of people fraudulently claiming benefits on behalf of a dependent, 30,000 blank EBT cards unaccounted for, and a failure to investigate some $15 million in suspicious transactions. Altogether, the potential fraud amounts to just over 1% of all benefits dispersed last year. And with me now is State Auditor Suzanne Bump. Welcome.
Glad to be here, Emily.
So this is the kind of stuff that drives people crazy, as you know. Is this the first time a thorough audit has ever been done of the Department of Transitional Assistance? Because it seems like this has probably been happening in the past.
Well, this is the first time that an audit has been done under my watch, and also the first time that there has been an audit of the EBT program, and so that which is obviously a key component to this audit. So it's been a while. We audit agencies in a normal 3-year cycle, and the first time for EBT.
All right. On the question of the lost EBT card or unaccounted for, do they have a face value? Can somebody take it and use it for something? I mean, you say they're blank. What could somebody do with 30,000 of those?
Well, they're required to be kept in secure locations within the regional offices of the EBT. As recently as a few years ago, there were problems with DTA employees taking the cards. You're right, they're blank, but then they would load benefits on them, and then they were
distributed to their friends or whatever.
And so, as recently as 2010, there were prosecutions for this. And so this audit, which covered a period beginning in 2010, found that there still were lax circumstances in some of these offices where unauthorized staff had access to them, where in fact, in one instance, even applicants for benefits could have accessed them. So it's a problem. It's a security measure. We've seen how they could be abused in the past. It should have been fixed. Frankly, it seems like a simple thing to fix.
Are there potential criminal charges coming out of that?
No, I don't think out of that, because they weren't used, but they are unaccounted for in the system. To have 30,000 cards go missing suggests you've got really a system failure.
Okay, on the benefits to the dead people, don't you have an automatic cross-check with the Social Security Administration so you could see X person has died, therefore that benefit would no longer go out?
Right.
How can that happen?
The checks weren't being done. They weren't being done on a timely basis, and so in most cases, a family member or guardian was continuing to access the benefits. In some cases, not just 6 months, not just a year, but up to 27 months after the person had been deceased, the benefits were still being accessed.
What is the cutoff? If somebody dies, is it another month or is that it?
I think it's within a month. I mean, you should be able to get this information much more rapidly than they were incorporating it into their system.
Okay, well, is that fraud? If somebody else is cashing somebody else's Social Security?
It could be. It could be fraud. There were other ways that Social Security numbers were being misused or abused, and that the actual holder of that number was not being verified. So some people were claiming benefits under 2 Social Security numbers, or there were multiple persons claiming benefits under the same Social Security number. Social Security numbers of deceased people were being used to access benefits. What clearly wasn't being done was that they were not using all of the tools that they had to verify what a claimant, an applicant, was saying was their Social Security number. And so that too is a problem of a lack of rigor in using the tools that are available to you.
And on the fraudulent claims by dependents, how did that work?
So they could claim that they had custody of a child that perhaps a former spouse had custody of, or they could have made up a person using a Social Security number. And when you combine that with the failure of the agency to do timely checks of academic records to make sure the kids were actually in custody, in school, in existence, you see that the system was open for abuse.
Well, as you know, Governor Deval Patrick has been very defensive of the system itself, saying, I'm not going to punish poor people. But State Senator Bruce Tarr told me that there are roughly 800,000 people in Massachusetts on some form of public assistance. I almost fell out of my chair. That's practically 1 out of 6 people. Is that right? And if so, how can that be? I can't tell you with certainty that the number is right. I can tell you, though, that if you consider the number of people who became eligible for food stamps, that number skyrocketed during the recession. And in fact, I think that the number of people just on receiving the food stamp or SNAP benefit grew by 78% over the course of the past few years. Now that, as the economy improves, as people get back to work, that number will go back down. But in fairness to the agency, that probably contributed to the problem of trying to keep up. But to my way of thinking, and I think to most taxpayers' way of thinking, you always have to maintain fraud fighting as a priority within your agency, even when your resources are strapped. One of the other things that the audit detected was that there were a lot of different kinds of reports that the agency could generate to determine whether particularly food stamp benefits, or other benefits, were being abused. We, using their system, generated any number of reports and found many patterns of activity, particularly with the food stamp benefit, that suggested fraud. Food stamp fraud rings involving merchants. There were lots of indicators of fraud that, if DTA had been looking, really would have warranted further investigation. Well, what kind of safety systems can be put in place now?
Well, with the new leadership at the agency, there is a 100-day plan that was announced, and they just did an update of it. That plan is, in fact, anticipated a lot of our audit findings, because we've been in there for over the course of a year talking to them as we were going along. And so they have produced a plan that really is very responsive to our findings. The proof will be in the pudding. It has to get implemented, and there has to be a long-term commitment made to integrity in this program. Taxpayers demand it, and so do the people who need the program to survive.
All right, State Auditor Suzanne Bump.
Thanks, Emily.
Amazing report.